Alrighty, welcome to the Family Business Podcast. This is episode 8. We are father. Is it really? It really is 8.
You looked?
I didn't check.
Oh,
I forgot to check. I got distracted.
7 or 8. I don't
7
know.
or 8. It's one of the. It's somewhere around there. But yeah, this is a podcast we started together. We're a father-son duo. We own a business together. It's a RoofMaxx dealership, and then he owns a marketing business as well. And we just talk marketing and business all the time. And so we decided, hey, why not record it and post it online, see if anybody cares to watch. So,
yep.
So yeah,
that they don't, we like talking about it. So.
Right. Yeah. And we just talk a lot anyway. So I think it's kind of fun. I finally finished like most of the artwork and stuff and the intros for the YouTube stuff. Cause we have the film, the full length videos that we're going to be posting on YouTube. So I've been kind of learning all that stuff, and it's episode 8, and we're finally
cover art for the podcast
and the cover art, and I'm still not even completely done with that yet. So, but I finally finished last night the first episode, like the video. All I need is the thumbnail and stuff, but it only took me 2 months. It's tricky. It's been a while.
It's hard to do. It's
been hard too, just because I'm like relearning some things and having to, learn some of the Adobe stuff is so deep and just so complex.
So much capability that it's hard to grasp even.
Well, and then a lot of it, because I love to draw, it's so much easier for me to draw it out. And so I'm using like these other softwares that are like baby versions. They're meant for, it's called Adobe Fresco. And it's meant for the iPad. So it's fantastic, but it's still kind of newer. And so they're constantly adding things in. But I'm having to jump around and stuff. And I'm like, man, this is crazy. This is what the life of a graphic designer feels like, I guess.
Yeah. But graphic artists more. Graphic designers a little more.
It's a little different.
There's definitely a difference.
For sure.
We were talking about that on the drive this morning. We went to a B&I group together. And I've known a lot of graphic designers. I mean, I have 4 or 5 that work for me right now in our marketing company and our magazine company. But there's only a few that I would call graphic artists.
Sure.
Because most graphic designers will do what you tell them to do. And I have some extremely talented graphic designers right now that are very good at laying things out and giving what you want. But I've only worked with a couple that were artists. Yeah. And you've definitely got to fit more into that group because you're not trained formally. You have no software training. You shunned computers for most of your life. Koby's a very outdoor person. So we were like, work on this, work on that. He never would. He never was interested in computers, but the iPad changed things for you.
It did. Yeah.
Well, the first thing we got you was that little drawing pad that connected to a computer.
Yeah. It's called a Huion, however you say it. They're pretty popular still, but the iPad changed everything just because the ease of use and how it just connects to my phone and
it's a little odd to look up and draw.
That was the hard thing. So nowadays the Huions are an actual screen, and they make some freaking sweet ones that are like massive, where it's like you could cover an entire desk with it. They're awesome, but they're expensive. The iPad is just nice. It's just so portable. It's so easy. I use it all the time anyways. I use it for work, and it's just been awesome. But I started drawing on there, and I've been drawing on my iPad for 5 years now, 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
And it's a completely different medium. It's not.
Well, the Apple Pencil also. It's the combo.
The Apple Pencil is amazing. It is pretty incredible. And it's just
I'm
so
sure
sleek.
There's people who draw
with
their finger, but
maybe. I don't know. If they do, they're psychos. That would be so frustrating.
I think before the Apple Pencil came out, people were figuring out to draw on the iPad.
Well, and there were other styluses and stuff that would work, right? Those felt tip ones. You get them on those crappy pens that you get from hotels and crap.
Little rubber tip, and those aren't very accurate.
No, those things suck. But
we used those to sign contracts when I worked at Living Scriptures. They would sign contracts with them because people you try to get somebody to sign with their finger that's over the age of 30, and they were look like little children's drawings. So, but yeah, the Apple Pencil changed it, and it made it so much more capable for doing actual art.
Right. And the thing was too, I don't think I would have drawn as much on it if I didn't start doing those the ads every month for the two brothers. Yeah. So I've been doing, anybody that doesn't know, for, gosh, I did it for 3 years almost.
Yeah,
Every single
probably.
month I'd do a drawing of these two brothers, and they do real estate, but I'd do them all buff and stuff in different scenarios.
Show their muscles.
Right. But I actually, like, I'm glad that I did that.
Go far to the gym.
Right. I like protein.
Protein. I love protein. You like protein?
But it just made me draw on the iPad every month. It made me consistent. It made me get on there and draw something. And they weren't the best every month. They weren't amazing or anything. But
you learn by repetition.
I learned. And then now it's funny. I was talking about Adobe Fresco earlier. I just started using that. And it's just for some of the features. They have some animation features and some things in there that are cool. But it's crazy. I can't sketch on it. I can only sketch on Procreate, which is the app that I started using and I've used for 5 years now. And I can't freaking sketch on the new one. I can't do it. Like, it's something with the brush physics. It like messes up my lines. Like, they don't follow the same. And so it's interesting. Like, it's been kind of a.
Do a lot of people draw with Fresco then?
It's becoming more popular, I think, just because people are starting to use it more, and it's kind of maturing. And so Adobe is constantly adding things to it, which is really cool. And it's a part of the Adobe cloud. So a lot of artists that are already using other, like Illustrator and Photoshop and all that stuff, now that the iPads are getting more capable, they're kind of moving over to Fresco. But Procreate is a little ahead of them as far as like the creative flow of drawing on like the experience of drawing on Procreate is much better for a sketch artist like me. Whereas like,
do you still put on like a cover on here to make it?
Yeah. So I have
Paper-like.
I have the Paper-like. I've used off-brand ones before. Paper-like, they're all pretty much the same.
Yeah.
It just has to add that texture so that there's some friction between the Apple Pencil and
the screen.
I used to draw on paper, obviously. I was a sketch artist. I did pencil, pen and ink, all that stuff. And there's like resistance when you're drawing a line. So you can pull a line that's much straighter on paper as opposed to just straight on the glass here. So that's a huge game changer. Like Nikel, my girlfriend, she has an iPad too. And she doesn't have the paper-like screen protector on there. And it's just glass. And every time I pick it up and try and draw something on there, I'm like, oh, this feels terrible.
I know.
Like, but she's used to it. She likes it.
Well, I remember when you first started getting those, I was like, oh, there's no other way to do this. That's way better.
It's so much better.
So do they wear out? Does the screen?
Yeah, so mine, partially because I press really hard, mine gets scratched up and just like beat to crap. And then your oils from your hands and stuff. I need to get like a little glove for when I'm drawing, so it just glides a little better, but also keeps some of the oils.
Little
off
Michael
the
Jackson glove.
Yeah.
White glove.
They're the weird ones though. They like cut off on your hand, so they like show these two fingers, but then
So
it's
you
just
have
for where you're
connection
resting.
with.
So you have something. It's almost like a mouse pad for your hand.
Yeah.
Like it just makes your hand glide over the screen.
Well, that wasn't our topic. But
No, we just went on a little drawing tangent, but yeah, our topic today. What was it?
Starting a business.
Yeah, just like those first few steps, and then like what you can kind of expect. I just went through it a couple years ago when we started RoofMaxx, and you've been very hands off with me a lot of the way, but also helped me with a ton of the beginning stuff that like most people have to deal with, it, like licensing and all that. So you kind of handled a lot of that and just said, hey, go out and I think you wanted me to just focus on the sales side of things and figure out how to sell the product, figure out how to apply the product and all that stuff. But that first little bit of starting a business is kind of scary for a lot of people.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I've had multiple people. In fact, at the BNI today, my friend Joseph said that. He's like, I went to Ryan. I was like, I don't know what to do. I'm trying to start this business. And I just kind of gave him what seems natural to me now because I have several businesses and have been in business for a long time, but things that I had to figure out at one point, and everybody has to figure them out. So we thought, you know what, let's try and talk about it. Let's talk about those initial steps. So if you're someone who is thinking about starting a business, this is a great episode for you to watch.
For sure. Yeah. So. I'll tell a little bit about kind of my experience starting. I had some help along the way, which was nice, but I think it's good to hear an example, especially if you're in like service and stuff like that. Obviously, I'm a little limited to my experience, but
And yours is unique because we bought a RoofMaxx dealership.
so the brand's already in place. I don't have to worry about any of that stuff.
Did not have to do a logo, did not have to do, we had to come up with a name because we had to file our LLC, which is RoofMaxx. We don't own RoofMaxx. RoofMaxx is its own independent entity, but we're a RoofMaxx dealer. So we operate under RoofMaxx of Ogden, but we had to have our own LLC that did not include the name RoofMaxx.
For sure. Yeah, and I think it was really nice for me. When we started, I was 19, turning 20. And he asked me what any of that stuff was. I would have had no idea, you know. But it was nice for me to be able to just hop in. And then we started, you know, right out the gate. It was kind of weird timing because it was fall. And so we started off really slow. We did a handful of jobs and I got like a little taste for it. But then we jumped in. It was nice because we had that winter. And that winter, I was able to kind of dig into networking and some of those things. But at first, it was kind of terrifying. I didn't know what I was getting into. There was no promise that I was going to make money. There was no promise that people were going to call us, you know.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of unsurety for me. I had just come from door-to-door sales, and you know, I knew that was a way I could make money. And I decided I didn't want to go back out. I decided I wanted to do this, and it's a risk, it's a jump, but if you're willing to take it, it's paid off. Like we've done pretty well, and it's continuing to grow, and hopefully, you know, gets way bigger than it is right now, and continues to do that. But
well, I think if someone is in that position, if you're buying a franchise, or if you're just going to start something from scratch, or maybe you've been doing something for a while, this is common. Joseph was a physical therapist already, and he wanted to start his own practice. Even though you know the skill maybe of what it takes, you know, like you don't necessarily know what it takes to start a business. But at the very beginning, there's a couple of key pieces, and some of it you can do out of order, and I actually recommend doing it out of order because sometimes people don't know if their business is going to work. And so they'll say, well, I got to get my LLC set up. There's $1,000. I got to get my logo done. And if you're not a graphic designer or don't have access to one, then that's going to be another $300, $400, $500, $600, you know, maybe more depending on who you hire. Then you got to get a website. Then you got to get, you know, all your stuff set up.
listed on Google and all that stuff. Yep.
But here's the thing. Sometimes it's better to go out and sell first.
Just start. Just hop in.
Don't ask anybody permission. Just go out and see if anybody's interested in your stuff.
See if it works.
Yeah. So when we first started Connection Publishing, the very first thing we did was go out and start selling. I didn't get a business license. I didn't set up an LLC. I didn't do any of that stuff. I went and talked to North Ogden City, to Mayor Brent Taylor, and said, here's my idea. He said, I love it. Let me present it to the city council. Well, it took 4 months. Like, city councils don't move fast. And so I was like, oh my gosh, this is taking forever. I didn't even know if it was going to go through. They might have said no, right?
Right.
And so, but I felt like I had something. So the next thing I started doing is I went out and sold advertising, pre-sold with no product in existence. And I just went and talked to businesses, and it wasn't easy, but we said, hey, this is what we're going to do. We think it's going to be great. We're going to partner with the city. And I sold 3 or 4 advertisements before we even launched. And I was able to go back to the city and say, I've already pre-sold 3 or 4 advertising. As long as you guys approve this, we've got advertisers ready to go. Yeah. And they were like, oh, great. As soon as they approved that, then I started doing all the stuff. So we set up an LLC, got the legal structure in place. It's good to have, you don't have to use an attorney to do this. I think it's good to do because they'll help you understand some things like exit clauses and, you know, how you're going to handle conflict and who's going to be the decider and all of those things, right? So then once we got that LLC set up, then it was time to do all the stuff, right? I usually go by, my style is though I go by URLs first, because I don't want it to get bought by someone else. So if I have an idea for something and I'm like, oh, I like that, I'll go buy the URL. But I think I counted the other day and I had something like 50 URLs.
Holy cow.
So those are other ideas I've had or variations on businesses I already have. You know, like I own Connection Publishing and ConnectionPub.com, and I own Connection Media Co. and ConnectionMediaCompany.com. And so I'll do variations on different things. And sometimes it's good to have a variation if you ever want to set up like a marketing funnel and you want to just draw leads into one thing that's just simple and is a, you know, landing page that can pull in leads. But for the most part, I'll buy a URL That's it. I don't go license it. I don't go to the state. I don't get a business license. I don't go to the city. I just go start selling. So
I feel like that could kind of help in those beginning stages too, almost with like motivation, because you can get stuck in that planning phase of like, oh crap, it's going to be here one day, but right now I got to think about all this other weird stuff that's not happening. You know, like that first winter was weird for me. And, but it was nice that I was able to, before we really got into a full season, go out and treat 8. I think it was 8 that we did 8 houses. We did 8 roofs, and, it just gave me some experience, gave me some, you know, going into that winter where we weren't going to have any jobs, showing up at BNI and networking meetings and being like, hey, I'm a RoofMaxx dealer, without having sprayed a roof. I would have felt so weird. Yeah. So I could see how that would help in that situation, because I feel like it's pretty easy to get caught up in that starting phase. So that's kind of a cool.
So interesting story. When I was first married, we had one of those first married couple friends that you meet, you know, and they were neighbors nearby and went to church with us, but it was the Burries. Their last name was Burry. And so we had another person that was went to church with us as well, that owned an asphalt company. And he was like, you know, you guys should do curb painting. It's something we always need, and they're unreliable companies. We can never find them. And we're like, oh, cool. That would be a great idea. And we're going to college, you know, and I've been super entrepreneurial my whole life, but I haven't been great at the like executing until I was like 40. I was always afraid of things. And so we sat down and started making a business plan, but our business plan basically revolved around making a name and coming up with a logo. And then we were going to go around and paint curbs for people's addresses. And we spent so much time trying to figure out that stuff. We never actually sold anything. I think I might have painted Grandma and Grandpa's curb.
One curb.
And it was just such a lesson. I mean, you had me, you know, that had already kind of gone through the pain of those things. I didn't have anybody that did that said, hey, don't worry about your logo. Come up with a decent name, but that can all change, right? Like we just changed our name from Connection Publishing to Connection Media Company because our business changed. I love the word connection, but our business changed. So you can change later, and you can find a new way to talk about things. It's okay. But what you can't do is fix a business that you can't make sales in. And if you have something that you can't sell, that's a problem. I had a meeting. I talked about this on my podcast this week too, but had a little meeting with a gal. She reached out on Facebook and was like, hey, I hear you help people with marketing and I got to redo everything. I need a new logo and a new name. And I was like, oh, okay, great. We love doing that. So I get on the phone with her and I was like, well, why are you redoing stuff? She's like, I've been doing this for a year and I spent $650 and had a website built and nobody is coming to it. And I was like, well, that doesn't have anything to do with your name or your brand. That has to do with the outreach you're doing, some sort of marketing. And I actually think I talked her out of all that because I was like, you don't need to redo all your brand. You need to figure out how to sell what you have. Your product is available to a certain group of people, right? And we'll talk about this later. I have my 5 key steps, but it's your who. I call it your who. Who's your who? Talk to 100 people that fit your who profile and then see what happens. And if none of them buy, you either have a price problem or a product problem. There's something off. So anyway, so I think it is good to go sell first.
For sure.
And RoofMaxx to me was easy because I was already sold. I found it because I tried to get it for my house.
Yeah.
And then they didn't have a dealer here. Right. And I was like, oh, well, how much is a dealership? So I spent $80,000 to treat my roof.
Well, and the nice thing too is the product's already right. Seriously. Yeah. It was an expensive RoofMaxx treatment right there.
It's paying off. It's doing okay.
Right. Yeah. But the nice thing was we didn't have to figure out our who yet. We had already, and we didn't have to figure out if there was a problem with the product, right? There's dealers all over the nation that are, super
Proven
successful.
Concept.
And that was the nice thing is we didn't have to think about that. But that is important. Like you were talking about this in your marketing class a week ago or whatever.
A couple weeks, yeah.
I just lost my train of thought. I can't remember what I was going to say.
Marketing.
Something about
Talking
your who.
about your who.
Goodness gracious, that was...
I'll let you think about that for a second because you're right. With a franchise, that's one of the pieces that make franchises less risky is that you come in and they know who your target audience is. They know they can make sales. They know that people respond to it. And some, of course, are going to be better than others, but it's much more proven, much more set. When we talked to RoofMaxx, we're like, who's the target audience? And they said, oh, it's typically men who are maintenance minded. They're 55 or older.
Yep.
They tend to like classic cars, and they like tools, and they like those guys. And you're like, oh, I know who that is, right? I can talk to that person. And so
I remembered what I was going to say, by the way,
Okay.
with the who. That was so stupid. I can't believe I thought about
Friday
something.
early morning. Yeah.
Oh man, this is the day that I wake up early for BNI, and I'm not usually up this early. It is when you're who is like anybody. You're like, when you say anybody who needs this, or anybody who does this, or anybody, like, you have to have it. It has to be specific.
Right.
Like,
I'm a plumber. Anybody who has a toilet.
Anybody who has it. No. You gotta be specific. You gotta have a target. You gotta have people that you're marketing to, or else going everywhere, it's not going to catch on, and nobody's going to see it. Nobody's going to pay attention because it's not going to be the right people.
Right.
So that's really important in that beginning stage. Like you were saying, obviously we're going to hop into these steps here in a second, but I feel like that's so important. Most people, when they get into business, they see the need and they want to fill the need for anybody, but they need to find the person, the specific subset of people that it's going to cater to perfectly, which for us 55-year-old plus, they like classic cars. They like, maintain, like a lot of the guys that I find I do the best with are people who have like a beautiful yard and like a beautiful garden and like flowers everywhere, and their house, like they're constantly, oh yeah, I painted this area last year and I did this and we just cleaned this out and just did this. Those people are the people that almost every single time will say, yes, let's do RoofMaxx because it makes sense to them. Yeah. Let's maintain this. Let's make it last and get as much money out of it as possible. Make the most out of our investment. Whereas other people, if I show up to a house and the lawn is, grown out, completely dead, I'm like, oh, these guys don't really care about their house. They're just freaked out because they don't want to spend $20,000 on a roof.
Right.
And so, but figuring out that is exactly. And figuring out that that's our person that we want to talk to makes it much easier for us on Facebook and things like that to send that out specifically to those people. And obviously some of that is a little super marketing heavy when you're starting out if you don't have a marketing background or a sales background, but it's important to think about. And
so before we go further into the marketing stuff, think back to when we started the dealership.
Yeah.
And now that you're 2.5 years into this, what are some things you would do differently or change at the very beginning?
Yeah, so there's a lot, man. Gosh, every day I'm like, oh, I should be doing this differently. There's just things you got to learn along the way, sometimes the hard way. And I think at first I didn't really know, I think a big thing that happened was I took that class for the contractor's license, like to get our B100 general contractor's license. Sitting through that class, they were talking about all this accounting stuff and bookkeeping stuff and legal documents. They had a lawyer in there, an accountant, and an insurance agent that did the whole 30-hour course. The whole time I was like, oh my goodness, I can't believe I didn't know this stuff about taxes. I can't believe I didn't know this stuff about employees. So that was one thing. Like when we first started, I called Doppel and I was like, hey, what kind of licensing do we need? What do we need licensing? I know in some states it's different. It just varies. And I think it was the lady's first day because she was like, yeah, no, you guys should be good. You don't need anything. I just like briefly told her which we took as gospel and went, for 1.5 years without doing anything. And then a guy from Doppel reaches out to me one day. He's like, hey, do you guys have licensing? He's like, we've gotten some complaints. We're going to fine you $1,000. And I was like, whoa. You guys told us we didn't need anything. What are you talking about?
And he's like, who did you talk to? And we're like,
I was like, the lady on the phone. It's been like 1.5 years. I have no idea. I talked to her for 20 minutes on the phone. That was about it. And most of that was waiting on hold. But so I didn't realize, that we needed that licensing because in some states you didn't. And so we heard that.
RoofMaxx wasn't any help. They didn't know because they're like, well, it depends on the state. And we're like, oh, and our state said no. And we thought.
But eventually they were like, hey, you need this licensing or else we'll serve you cease and desist.
Luckily they gave us a ticket. They gave us a violation, but they, decreased the fee, which was nice. And they were able to. They were working with us, which was nice because we really did make the attempt and they believed us, which they didn't have to believe us, but luckily they did.
For sure. Yeah, but it was a good, it was very eye opening. I went and took that course, and some of the accounting stuff. Like I wish right off the bat, like I wish I would have taken an accounting class like as soon as we started, because it would have saved me so many headaches. Like that first year afterwards, like when we were doing our taxes and stuff, I was like, holy cow, I wasn't tracking anything. I had no idea what was going on. I had no idea where our numbers were.
And I'm no help with this because I hate this stuff.
I hate it too with a passion. Math was like my least favorite subject in high school, but now it's coming back to bite me in the butt, where it's like, okay, if that's not your strong suit, either figure out.
Well, both your grandpas were accountants, so there's got to be a little bit in there.
Maybe there's something deep down that
My dad,
I don't know about.
When I went to college, he was like, you need to take an accounting class. Yeah. And I was like, fine, whatever. I took it. And about 3 weeks in, I called him and I was like, this is what you do for a living? This is the worst thing I've ever experienced. It was terrible, but it is super important.
It's so important when you're running
and you're
going
to have different levels. You need to find trusted advisors if that's not your thing. Like I have a bookkeeper who does a really good job, and I have an in-house like billing person that makes sure invoices are done right, that they're collected, all of those things. And, when you're smaller, those jobs are all yours.
Right.
And so you just have to figure out the basics. And then eventually when you get busy enough and you can afford it, hire a bookkeeper, someone you've got one in your B&I group, and they're very valuable. They're really important.
Yeah, no. And I don't know, like I struggle even looking at the number. Like I hate it. I have to force myself to do it. But
it. Yeah, no, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I don't know. It's when I'm starting when I'm starting a thought, but I'm still stringing the words together in my brain. And it's like, yeah, no, I don't know is what comes out for some reason.
It's something that Utahns do. I don't know if it's everywhere or if it's just a Utah thing. Yeah, no, I don't know.
Maybe Colorado a little bit too. I don't know. Maybe it's just the Rocky Mountain. We're up here so high that the oxygen is just like
depleting.
I lost my train of thought again. I can't remember what we were talking about. I just couldn't
help it. Yeah, no, I don't know. That's like your mom. She always says, I don't know.
I don't know. That's hilarious. Well, should we hop into these steps here and
yeah. Was there anything else that you wish you did different? So obviously counting was important.
I'd say like one thing too to keep in mind, especially if you're starting as a partnership, really dig deep on like if you want to start it with that person. Like you told me a statistic when we first went into business, you were like 90 something. It's like 97% of all partnerships fail within the first like 2 or 3 years, I think. And it's just because when you're working in business with somebody, you're not always going to see eye to eye with them.
I have a partnership on another business that is deteriorating right now. In the process of falling apart completely.
Right. And that people don't go into business thinking, oh, I'm going to, hate my best friend for the rest of my life because of a business
Pollyanna.
Exactly.
Like we're buddies.
Right. And so when we started, we had an agreement, we had everything laid out and documents in place saying, if we have a falling out, this is what we're going to do. We're not going to, let this come between us. But in the case that it does, because father-son duos, like that happens a lot. You hear about it all the time where it's like, they fall apart or something happens and they just hate each other's guts. They don't want to talk to each other ever again.
I said to you, money is not more important to me than having a relationship with my son. So I don't really care. We have to find a way to work through it. And if that means I've got to get out of the business or something, like that's better to me than losing the relationship. So in the moment, at the beginning, it's easy to say that, but then you have to make decisions as you're going forward that actually match that, right? So you have to say, what's more valuable to me? What's more important? And to me, a relationship with you is more important than having a business or squabbling over money or whatever it is. But not everybody has that personality either. Like some people really don't like to feel taken advantage of. And if you feel taken advantage of, that becomes very, it can be a canker in the works, but there's also the aspect of, the thing that's happening with the partnership I have is I don't think anybody feels bitter or anything other than the other owners are just impatient with the results because it's their what to eat for dinner brand and we aren't making any money. And it's a lot of work, and it's been a lot of work. And our partner is our main graphic or web designer, and he's incredible. He has all these capabilities, and he's done something else. He started another business, and that business is making money. And he's like, I got to focus my efforts there because I need money, right? Sometimes it just falls apart because of that. And so, you have to kind of think through what's going to happen. if you're going to have patience in something. And to me, What to Eat for Dinner is a challenging one because it's building a following, like the podcast, right? You want to build a following. It's unless you just get lucky and you have some special thing about you that really draws people into you, it's going to take a long time. People are going to observe from a distance for a long time before they ever actually engage. So
sure.
Anyway, you have to be really careful with that stuff. I build into contracts when I start with partners a divorce clause.
Yeah.
And it's funny because in my marriage, Mom and I made the decision when we were dating, we would never bring up the D word. We wouldn't use that as leverage against each other. We wouldn't say, well, if you don't do that, we're going to get a divorce, or I'm so sick of this, I want to get a divorce. Like we've never used those. Yeah, we've never used that terminology. But in business, I think you sit down and you say, okay, if things go to hell in a handbasket, here's our divorce policy, right? Here's how we're going to do it.
For sure. It's so important. And especially like so many people go into business with their friends and their family. And it was interesting in that course for the license, the accountant talked about embezzlement and how 9 times out of 10, if you start a business, the people that embezzle from you will be your closest friends and family.
And your family.
And then they'll show signs of it by being like too generous. Like they'll start giving you gifts and things because they feel guilty. But it's crazy because it's like you don't think about that when you're going into business with somebody, but you need to.
You go in with pure intentions, especially if you're someone who tends to be very pure and you don't have those, things or thoughts. You'll be very trusting that others are going to do the same thing.
Yeah, a lot of people can get taken advantage of.
They
But
can.
yeah, that's really important too. I'm glad we did that. If we hadn't, obviously we would have it now once I had learned about that,
And I mean, I'm sure we didn't cover everything, but try to think ahead. Try to think what's going to happen. Another piece that was important to me, and I learned this, so sometimes you have to stand up and say, okay, I'm going to be a leader in this moment. And one of the things that I decided is you didn't have any money. You were broke. You were still a teenager, really. You were 19. Yeah. And I had some money and I wanted to invest it and I was ready. And I've seen a lot of situations where the dad is the owner and the kids work for them. I didn't want that. And I couldn't really approach it that way because I had enough money to make the purchase and to buy all the equipment and to buy some marketing. I didn't have any wages. I didn't have any ability to pay somebody to run it.
Right. Yeah.
And I didn't have the time to do it myself. I already had a business that was very busy. And so I needed a partner that was willing to be the grunt work, if you will, right? To step in. And so that was an interesting move, but I made Koby a 50% partner in it. And I told him this. I said, I'm going to make you a partner because I want you to treat this like you own it. Because I'm putting up a lot of money here and more than I've ever put up for any other business. Like my other businesses, I didn't put up that kind of money because I bootstrapped them, but this was the first time I actually had money to invest. And so I think when I think that helped as well as I said, you're my partner. You're not my employee. You're not going to treat this like you got to work for your dad. And if dad's going to be mad, we didn't treat it that way from the very beginning. You were a partner. You were my equal, and we were working together. That doesn't mean we don't have conflict because we do.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's part of business, right? And there's been a couple thrown things and angry times. Sure.
They definitely have. Mostly probably just because I'm an idiot.
Well, we don't always see eye to eye, but no two people aren't going to see eye to eye.
For sure.
Yeah. All the time. Most of the time we're on the same page, but there's times where it's just, you don't. And you have to be aware of that. And I've told Koby this too. I've said, I have to be able to get frustrated and for you not to feel attacked personally. Like I'm saying, you're a piece of crap because you didn't do this. I'm just saying, we have to do this. This is a mistake. This is hurting us. And same for you, being able to say, okay, I'm frustrated in this situation. There needs to be that conversation. I had an employee that was always upset because I'd correct him and he just felt like I was going to fire him. And I'm like, dude, I might because you're driving me nuts, like being so self-conscious about this. And eventually he realized, I'm trying to create a situation where we can work well together and I'm giving you feedback like this doesn't work for me. You calling me at 11:30 at night because you want to work nights doesn't work for me. I don't want to work at 11:30 at night. In fact, I'm in bed at 11:30. I'm hopefully asleep at 11:30 at night. So anyway, work through those things at the beginning if you can, if you're going to have a partner.
The other thing I was going to say, I wish I had known what taxes were going to look like going in. And the thing is so different for everybody. So I just had this like idea in my head, oh yeah, it's going to be this percentage or whatever. And it wasn't that way at all. So before tax season, before the end of your first like full year, make sure you get a good CPA that can advise you where you need to. And I would even consult them at the beginning and just say, hey, I don't know if I'm even going to sell stuff,
I'd say
but how much should I put away?
$10,000.
Go make $10,000. Okay.
Yeah. Make your first $10,000 sale and then.
Right. And then go talk to a CPA and then say, hey, what do I need to prepare for? Because like for us, it's a pass-through tax. So all the profit gets split between us and then we pay taxes individually on that because it's an LLC,
and one of the
nice.
Pieces that I didn't know was that the product that we had on hand counted as, I'd never had inventory before. I'd always sold services.
So we had no idea that the product, the value, the cash price of the product that we had on hand counted as extra. Like this year, we're going to have a bunch of extra product. Right. And so that's going to be a bunch of extra.
$25,000 at least.
Right, exactly. And so like those are all things that we had no idea. And then we went into that first tax season and she told me how much I owed. And I was like, are you kidding me? What is that? Where does that come from? You know, like the numbers I had in my head weren't even close to the actual numbers. So I think having been, a little more prepared for that first tax season would have been really nice. If I had talked to somebody and just been like, hey, this is our business. This is how we're thinking about taxing it. Because we ended up switching too, how we tax our tax structure. So we're an LLC tax filing as an S Corp now because it ended up saving us some money. But you need to figure that stuff out beforehand because sometimes it's a little too late. If you get to April 15th and you haven't done anything, haven't even thought about it.
Well, that first little year, we didn't make enough for it to matter. We didn't even realize.
For sure, yeah.
But then the second year, it pounded us, and neither one of us was prepared for it. I just didn't have any idea on the inventory piece, just underestimated that whole piece. For sure. So
yeah, and that was, I wish I would have dug into the numbers a little bit more. Like if I could go back, that would be the one thing. If I could change one thing, would just be the accounting side of things, the bookkeeping side of things, and then the tax strategy. Just knowing how to manage our money so that when tax season comes around, we're prepared and not like, holy crap, we've got to pay so much extra than way more than we thought. That's a scary situation to be in.
So here's the basics of what you need to do. If you're thinking about starting a business, you got to obviously have an idea, have something that is sellable, know what your prices are, what you're going to charge. You need to make some sales, but then you need to go and get an LLC set up, or if you want a different business structure, you can, consult with an attorney. Yeah, there's other different things you can do. You could just start as a sole proprietor and really not file anything and then just get a business license. You can do that. It's a little trickier to do, but have some sort of structure, right? Number two, get a license. Usually you have to get a license through the state. And in Utah, we have to also get a city license. So I actually have licenses in North Ogden and in Ogden for one business, and you have a license in North Ogden. So we're licensed with the state, registered with the state as a business, and then if you're in a service industry, there's some sort of DOPL in your state. So DOPL stands for Department of Labor.
Professional Licensing.
Yeah. So it's basically for service providers. If people are going out to people's homes or businesses and functioning in a service provider function, it doesn't apply to my industry, to marketing, but it does apply to our RoofMaxx business. So something like that, look into licensing, look into what you need to do there. Some places you might need to get licensed and bonded. There's different things you'll have to do. So just, and don't be afraid to ask questions. A lot of times, I've probably had 6 to 8 people come to me at the very beginning of starting an idea. Several of them have been Koby's friends actually, because they're starting a business and they're like, about this stuff. Can you help me?
Right.
And a lot of it, I learned because I had to go through it myself, but I also noticed people get hung up because they don't know what to do. I will call and I'll say this very thing. Hey, I apologize. I am probably dumb. I'm just brand new. I've never done this before. Can you help me? I need to know what licenses I'm supposed to get. By playing that card and just telling people up front, I'm surprised how willing people are to help and give advice when you say, look, I just don't know what I'm doing. And it's worked every time for me. And I've been able to get all the information I need without having to pay someone or do something like that. So, but I think once you got your licenses, the next step is figuring out how to run a business. And so you've got to figure out how to make sales, how to service those sales, and then how to, keep good customer service and get more of them. That's the basic structure. Sure. So talk about that with RoofMaxx. How do you get sales? How do you service those sales? And then how do you give good customer service?
Sure. So obviously we've talked about some of our marketing, things that we do for RoofMaxx, but we get our leads. They come in either through Facebook or people call us.
Yep.
And it's basically just an evaluation. That's all they want. They want me to come out and look, see if it's the right fit. So then I go out, schedule an appointment, go out, look at the roof, and then I do my whole sales presentation and everything, which has changed over the years. We've kind of dialed it in a little bit more, but and then once I sell.
So dig into that a little bit though. When you first started, RoofMaxx gave us information.
Sure.
But did you write it out? Did you practice it beforehand?
A little bit. Luckily, I'd had some door-to-door experience. And so the sales, being in that situation where you're with a customer, you're telling them about a product, you're walking them through, why it works for them, why they should buy it, right? So I was comfortable with that. I can't remember if I wrote out a script. I think I probably wrote something. But at first, it was just I'd get there, I'd hop on the roof, I'd take some pictures, and I'd briefly tell them about RoofMaxx and just be like, yeah, it's really cool. It's this oil. It goes into the shingles, makes them flexible again. We give you a 5-year warranty, and then we'll warranty the shingles too.
And lucky to have a franchise because we went through 30 hours of training and videos of them doing these same things. So we kind of knew what to do.
We kind of knew what to do, but it changes depending on your market and not just your market. I'd say more so just your sales style. You got to figure out your sales style, and you got to figure out how to be comfortable talking to a customer. You got to be comfortable with your product enough that when they question you, you can be like, yeah, no, this is why it does that. This is why it's like that. And obviously some of that comes from just trial and error, just hopping in and getting going. But at first our sales, my pitch was very loose. I wasn't closing very many, a high percentage of them. And it was just, I just show up, tell them what it was, and just say, yeah, this is the price, and walk away. Yeah. Eventually, I started learning. Luckily, RoofMaxx has a ton of really good resources for us, lots of good graphics and animations and videos and things. So I started incorporating more of a presentation into my, before I even hop on the roof with somebody now, I show up, I have my iPad, I have a whole slideshow that I walk them through. I show them everything about RoofMaxx, about their roof, why it ages, showing them pictures and diagrams, all the testing that backs our product, and showing them some of the, collaborations that RoofMaxx has done that kind of solidifies RoofMaxx as a big brand. Yeah. Because it's still somewhat new. RoofMaxx has only been around under the name of RoofMaxx for 5 or 6 years. It's been 7 or 8 that they've actually been on the market where residential homeowners could buy RoofMaxx. But it helps a lot to have all that stuff. But I found out that going through and solidifying our product first, showing them the presentation, and then saying, yeah, we'll see if it works out for you. I want to make sure this makes sense. So I'm going to hop on the roof. I'm going to take some photos. We'll see if it's too far gone. You need a roofer to replace it. Or if you need to do RoofMaxx, or sometimes it's too early. Sometimes people call me out and they don't quite need it yet. And I'm just like, hey, it's not really going to take the treatment, But I found that explaining everything, telling little stories about treatments as I go, and then at the end just saying, having a closing question. You got to ask for the money. You got to ask for, and it depends on who the customer is. Sometimes it's a little softer, sometimes it's a little harder. And you get good at gauging that as you go, as your sales skills kind of evolve, and especially
your ability to read them is important. What their
for sure
personality's like, and what
body language and all that stuff.
What they need to get them,
tone of voice, and
the one thing that's important is not everybody who will watch this is in a sales situation like that. Right? That's a very, it's a opportunity. You show up to their house, you do an assessment, you bring them, you build the product, talk about it, and then you're closing the sale. That's very direct sales oriented.
For sure.
That's where you were before. That's where I spent my whole career. But like if you start a bakery on the corner,
you're not going to go knocking on people's doors
right.
or
you're, like
doing a presentation on why you should eat a cinnamon roll.
Yeah. So Isaac is one of Koby's best friends. Grew up together, spent days and days together just doing dumb stuff and having fun. And it's awesome. He's a great kid. And he's a man now too, but I call him a kid. He'll forever be a kid to me. But he and Koby worked together doing landscaping. And so lawn mowing, basically, not even landscaping. But Isaac fell in love with the business. And after Koby got out of it, Isaac continued servicing many of those houses that he had originally done. But then he moved into commercial and into installation. He worked almost primarily through word of mouth, which is a way sometimes people do. And honestly, if you are okay with growing slow or if you don't have a big need, that's okay. And that's what Isaac did. But that's a different way to do it. Just very slow word of mouth. Somebody calls you when they're a referral, very different between a lead and a referral. A lead comes in from Facebook. They don't know who you are from Adam.
No.
A referral, they're like, hey, my friend has you mow their lawn. I want you to mow my lawn. How much do you charge? Okay, great. Like super easy. But you could also be retail. The key with retail is just to make sure you stand out enough people know you're there and what you do. So find some way to communicate it. But that's you. I remember you working on it, thinking about the way to say things. We went to the dealers conference with other RoofMaxx dealers, and we were asking them, "How do you say this? What do you do?"
Yeah,
and that helped a ton.
It does help if you can find, if you don't have any sales skills, like somebody that's in that industry that does, typically will help you a little bit. And it's good to go shadow people that are in a similar, whatever you're doing. So like. Obviously, it's a little different for sales versus non-sales businesses. For a non-sales business, maybe you're just going to try to emulate the mom and pop shop down the street that has a really cool,
Well, sometimes there's associations like one that's coming to my mind is there's a martial arts center down in Clearfield. Mm-hmm. And he's part of an association and they send him ads and they send him specials and they say, okay, here's what you could do. And then he can just plop his logo on there. Oh, so you could look for like associations in your type of business that are doing the same things and they're going to have ideas you're not aware of. And then you can use those and you'll pay them a fee and they'll send you the stuff and utilize it. Those can be really powerful.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. I know that Brett Hadley with Master Electric, he's in an association as well. They get together with other electricians and home service providers and it's been phenomenal for him. He said it's been a huge help because they've learned how to do things better and be a bigger, more powerful business. So
yeah, that's cool.
So once you're ready, these are the 5 steps that you got to go through. This is basically your marketing step. So if you're brand new, step number 1, define your who and your who's why. Who are you talking to? Not if you say anybody or everybody, you haven't defined it well. You haven't figured it out. You got to dial it in a little bit more. Okay. So define your who and then your who's why. That's the primary reason your who will do business with you over a competitor, right? What's special about you? What's unique? What's your key thing? Okay. Once you've done that, if you need help with that, you can go to connectionmediaco.com/tools. And there is a who and why worksheet. Just fill them out. It'll help you define who you're talking to and why they would do business with you. Then you need to do research. You got to research keywords. You got to research your competitors. You got to see what other people are doing. Go on the internet. Go drive around. Right. If there's other bakeries in town, go see what they're doing. Read their reviews. See what people like about them. See what people don't like about them. Yeah. Okay. Number 3. Decide how you're going to market. It could be as simple as we're going to hand out flyers door to door, or I'm going to go to the mall and I'm going to hand out little samples of my cinnamon rolls. Whatever it is, find some way to get the word out. It could be going to a BNI, or joining your local chamber. It could be, door to door. It could be anything. We go door to door to businesses and say, hey, we have advertising options. Who handles your advertising? And we try to, get them to advertise in our publications or do other things. So you decide on how you're going to market. And then you assign a budget to it and repeat. Market every month, spend the money, bite the bullet, and just do something to make sure people know that you're there and what you do. And number 4, create a content marketing calendar. So know what you're going to do each month of the year. How am I going to market? What are we going to put into place? And it doesn't matter if it's social media. You're like, okay, I can only afford to do organic social media free, right? And maybe you only have 10 people watching it, but 10 people is better than 0. So, but every month, every week, have something that you're going to post. If you're in retail, have some sort of special or some kind of an event. If you're in sales, have something that you're doing that's a reach out piece. Have a content marketing calendar. Think ahead of what you're going to do and make a plan. And then number 5, analyze and adjust, because nothing that you do is going to always work perfectly right from the first. You do need to give things time. If you're going to market on Google or on Facebook, you got to give it time to figure out the algorithm, figure out what people are interested in and those kinds of things. But when something isn't working, it's time to pull back and say, all right, I'm going to adjust. I'm not going to stop spending that money. I'm going to stop spending that money there. Yep. So those are your 5 steps for your marketing plan. If you can do those 5 things when you first start, it'll be a huge boon to you and just give you a lot of things. In fact, here's a quote from Mark Twain. He said, "The difference between the almost right word and the right word is the difference between the lightning bug and the lightning."
Wow. That's a cool quote. That's awesome.
So you got to get things right. Dial in that marketing.
For sure. And the analyze and adjust part is really important. Like we've had to analyze and see things not work out the way we want them to and reallocate money and
waste some money. We've lost some money on things and
for sure.
Frustrating in the moment, but
yeah. But now that we know, we plan ahead and make sure that, okay, next time we're in this situation, we're not going to do it like this or whatever, But cool. Well, I think we've been going for a while now, almost an hour. Should we wrap things up? It's a long one. Cool. Well, thanks for tuning in. If you're still here, please go and give us a like. Just drop a like, drop a comment on any things you want us to talk about. If there's a topic you want to hear us rant on about for an hour, then let us know in the comments. Make sure and share it with your friends. And yeah, it's the Family Business Podcast. We'll see you guys next week.
Ciao.